Kelly Time Cat. Welcome to Vlog 13, January 2023. I've decided to make a blog once a month. I'll give some thoughts on the films that I've seen but not got round to reviewing fully, at least yet, and also talking about some recent significant events. So welcome to January, not my favourite month, but the year seems to have started off well on a personal level. At the start of the year, I was still in Wales and I had my second COVID booster. I was the only person attending. The car park was empty. It's strange how some people are not bothering with their shots. Although this week I've heard that the cases of flu and COVID have started to drop significantly. It's been fairly cold in London, and on Monday 23rd I noticed from my weather app that the air pollution index had shot up to level 7. Usually it's level 2 or level 3. This piqued my interest, and drilling into the data on the app, it looks like PM 2.5s were the most significant pollutant, 70.79 micrograms per cubic metre. There were warnings that pollution was going to stay higher the next few days. The Mayor of London put out notices, and yet I noticed cars still parked up, idling. There seemed to be just as much traffic as ever on the road. There's a fair amount of controversy at the moment about the expansion of the ULEZ, which currently goes up to the North Circular and South Circular, and in August it's going to be expanded to the whole of Greater London, a significantly increased area, and some people, some groups in the outer boroughs are objecting strongly. It must be difficult for people with older vehicles, but everyone deserves clean air. We all ought to be able to look after our lungs. There needs to be some way of tackling pollution. The ULEZ has applied in my part of inner London for a long time. I think it's quite good that we've got level 2 most of the time when it comes to pollution, and yet I think we could do better still. In the news as well, on 19th January, Jacinda Adern announced that she was stepping down as the Prime Minister of New Zealand. When elected in 2017, she became the youngest female PM, and during her term of office, she had a baby. It was a tumultuous term in office with natural disasters, terrorist attacks, and the COVID pandemic. And I heard a very interesting perspective on LBC when David Lammy interviewed Helen Clark, who led the country between 1999 and 2008. She explained that although the first lockdowns in 2020 were successful and saved many lives, as the situation persisted into 2021, some protest groups descended on Parliament in NZ, and they led a sustained and rather vicious campaign against vaccinations and against lockdowns, and the situation has become very difficult. Helen Clark also gave an illuminating description of how much effort and determination it took for her to become the country's 37th Prime Minister. It's well worth a listen if you've got the LBC or Global app. The price of electricity and gas have risen again at the start of this month, and after some thought, I bought a new kettle that displays the temperature of water and can heat it up to the temperature I've chosen. When I unwrapped it, I set it to heat water up to 70 degrees Celsius, and that is enough. It's quite a comfortable temperature for drinking hot water. I gather that for coffee, it's best to have 90 to 95 degrees Celsius. Boiling water is too hot. It's a similar temperature for black tea, whilst green tea is better at 75 to 80 degrees Celsius. Also, when you heat water for a hot water bottle, 70 degrees Celsius suffices for me. Manufacturers usually place a warning on their bottles saying do not use boiling water because it damages the rubber. It's a lovely clear bromosilicate glass kettle with a blue LED light when switched on, and it beeps when you put the kettle on the power base. I find it enjoyable to watch the bubbles build up as the water heats. I said I'd run through some of the films I've seen this month, so started off the new year with Il Postino, The Postman, 1994. There's a similar named film from 1997 that a friend warned me had won the Golden Raspberry. This film from earlier in the 90s counts as a classic. This film stars Massimo Troisi as Mario Ruopolo, who gets a job as a postie after finding he is unsuited to the traditional fishing work that his father and many of the other villagers earn their livelihood from. He has one special customer, a poet who is living in exile, and through his visits he learns all about the beauty and romantic nature of verse. It's a lovely, sweet story, and yet I discovered afterwards that it's tinged with tragedy too, as Massimo died the day after filming was wrapped, he died of a heart attack. But it's a great legacy. I've seen Language Lessons. I saw that. That was absolutely great. The Kindness of Strangers 2019 stars an ensemble of actors. Oscar-nominated Bill Nighy and Zoe Kazan play characters from very different situations. Their lives intersect. And as the title suggests, kindness very much helps the different people, especially when they get caught up in dire situations. Dive 2022. A successful swimmer on the Mexican Olympic team is asked to partner up with a 14-year-old swimmer who is upcoming in her sport. Although she's initially reluctant, she then faces a major dilemma as her coach faces a series of allegations and she's called to defend him. It's a compelling story. It's really heavy subject, but interesting, really worthwhile. The Kiss 2003. This is a straight-to-video film. I wasn't sure about it for that reason, and yet in practice that's the same as a lot of streaming films that never make it into the cinema. Streaming's just now the prevalent form of distribution, whilst in the past it was more videos, going to Blockbusters or hiring it some other way. This stars Francois Sorel as Cara, who has been promoted as a book editor. When clearing out an office, she finds a romantic manuscript that appeals so much that she's determined to find out how the story finishes. However, there seem to be some missing pages, and so she embarks on a trip to find the author. The way the story was put together kept me interested throughout, especially as things didn't pan out as I was thinking they might. Home Alone 1990. I was curious about seeing this film as it's become part of the language, mainly through references in the tabloids whenever an unfortunate child is left at home by a family for whatever reason, forgetfulness or sometimes more nefarious reasons. In this particular case, a young boy, Kevin, bravely fights off home intruders and baddies when his family, a large family, go off on holiday to Paris, and he has to use his inventiveness to tackle the villains trying to break into his home. End to End 2021. After being knocked for six by the pandemic lockdowns, the fairly newly successful musician George Ezra embarked on a 1,200-mile hike from Land's End to John O'Groats, along with two of his friends. He'd been having major concerts in 2019, and then everything just came to an abrupt halt. But he found this as a great way of reconnecting, with opportunities to find out more about his family's musical heritage and learning more about himself. I didn't know that much about George Ezra. I've listened to his music. I've listened to a lot of Capital Cymru when I'm on my treadmill. And it was only really that a friend mentioned that she liked him when I was discussing with her about the Brit Award nominations for Best Singer, and she said she quite liked George Ezra. I was thinking about a couple of women who hadn't made it onto the nominations this year, Charlie XCX. Anyway, I found George Ezra very likeable, and it was great to see what a tough 3-month experience it is to make that journey, long distance trek from the southwest of England right up to the north coast of Scotland. It's quite a trek in a car, but on foot it is a real challenge. Muriel's Wedding 1994. This is an amusing tale about the daughter of a corrupt councillor who dreams about getting married, but she has no luck, except she finally catches a bouquet. She gets arrested right at the start at one wedding for shoplifting. She gets arrested after getting spotted by a store detective, and then the story develops very humorous. I hadn't seen Toni Collette, the much younger Toni Collette. She was absolutely great. Really interesting film, very funny. It's got some poignant moments, ups and downs. The whole development of areas like, I guess this is probably a fictional town, Porpoise Spit. It's the kind of thing. I had a web search afterwards and I found out that there's other developments going on in Australia that people are really worried about. What's Eating Gilbert's Grapes, 1993. That's another classic 20th century film that I saw. Stars Johnny Depp and Leo DiCaprio. It's mainly the protagonist is Johnny Depp's character. He's in his late teens or early 20s. He's struggling. He's got a younger brother who's got educational needs. He's got some condition that I can't remember, and his mother is housebound. And like a few coming of age stories, he's just trying to find a path to hold things together. His little brother would climb up a water tower. The ladder, of course, highly risky, going so high up, and the police would be really annoyed and want to arrest him, and a lot of difficult things in a small Midwestern town. Very interesting story. The family name is the Grape. I've mentioned The Bicycle, saw that was great. And A Man Called Otto, 2022. This I will review. Great film. That was my first film in the cinema. Then I saw Tar, 2022, again in the cinema. Cate Blanchett. Quite an amazing story about power relationships, about abuse of power. Again, hope to do a review on that. Very long film. Quite difficult in some ways. Watching it all, you'd call Kate's performance a tour de force. One more film that I've seen is Baghead. Blimey, that was a 2008 film, shot August 2007, and it stars, amongst other people, Greta Gerwig, who I just love. I think she's fabulous. Started thinking of her when I saw her younger self in the film, and yet I didn't quite recognise her. It stars four people. They want to make a film. They've just been to see a film. They're a bit inspired by it. One character in particular is inspired by the filmmaking process that's in this Q&A session. So they decide to do something similar but different, but it's about a serial killer stalking people in a remote cottage. And it was a bit jumpy. I wasn't sure what was going to happen. You're deep in the woods, scary thing, especially at night. And so, yeah, I thought really fun film to watch if you just like a bit of tension, comedy, horror, I guess. Yeah, just seeing how the interpersonal dynamics, how people get along with each other or don't in some cases. In some ways, it also reminded me of a film I saw last year, Dave Bolter Mays, that just reminded me a bit of that. Other elements similar to Blair Witch, a bit similar in other ways, not quite. Anyway, those are my films I've seen in January, and the month's not over yet, so there might be a few more to come. We'll see how things go. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoy the rest of the month. I'll see you in February. Bye for now.